Scaling a law firm doesn't have to mean working longer hours or adding more stress to your plate. The key is working smarter, leveraging global talent, structuring compensation effectively, and integrating scalable systems that allow your firm to grow while maintaining efficiency and profitability. And that's exactly what today's session will cover. Before we dive in, I would like to take a quick moment to thank our session sponsor, DocketWise. DocketWise is a comprehensive, all-in-one immigration and case management software designed specifically for immigration lawyers. It streamlines case management with tools for tracking leads, managing cases, creating custom reports, and securely handling client data. Please be sure to visit their booth to learn more about their product. Now for this session, we'll be joined in a moment by Powers, a board-certified immigration attorney and founder of Powers Law Group. With over 16 years of experience in law practice management, Ruby has helped countless law firms streamline their operations and scale strategically. She's the author of Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice Without Losing Your Mind and Power Up Your Practice, both packed with practical guidance for running a thriving, sustainable firm. Through her consulting firm, Powers Strategy Group, she works with law firms to optimize their business strategies, and she also shares valuable insights through her podcast, Power Up Your Practice. In the next hour, Ruby will walk us through key strategies for scaling a law firm in a way that is both intentional and effective. She'll cover how to hire the right people at the right time, build remote teams that actually work, and structure compensation to attract and retain top talent, all while keeping your firm financially sustainable. Thank you so much, Ruby, for being here today. Excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Joshua. I'm really excited to be here. And that is a lot to cover in our time together, but we're going to talk about the highlights and really just help you make sure that you've got the right framework for this, because it is difficult. I remember being afraid of hiring my first staff member, and a lot of the consulting that I do, I think that first leap of faith is such a big one. But then after you overcome that, then you get used to it, and it gets easier and easier. So depending on whether or not you are a true solo or do you have a large firm, we're going to hit up a lot of great points as we talk about the smart ways to scale your practice with a team, from the global hiring, the remote work, and the compensation strategy. So we can go ahead and get started with the slides. And I love this to be interactive, so feel free to put questions in. Feel free to make comments. Love just to have that sort of that dialogue as much as possible. So again, my name is Ruby Powers, and I'm with Powers Strategy Group, which is the law practice management consulting, small business consulting. But I'm also we can go to the next slide. I am representing also, I have a law firm called Powers Law Group based in Houston, Texas. So one of the things that I sometimes now forget to mention, because it's already been about 13 years, is that I once ran my law firm from Dubai. I was the virtual assistant, I guess you could say. I had an assistant in Houston, and I was in Dubai with a 10 and 11 hour time difference. And when I did that, it was because my husband was planning to take a job abroad, and we knew that I needed to keep my law firm, which I had started in 2009, a little nimble in case we were going to go abroad. And sure enough, it did happen. It was during I just had a child, so keep that in consideration. It was the Arab Spring. There was a lot of things going on, and we went to the Middle East. But I had a really great mentor, Reed Trouts, and I brainstormed, how can I make this work? And in fact, we flourished. The law firm flourished. We grew from 1.5 people to like 4 or 5 by the time I came back, only 14 months later. So I come with that perspective 14 years ago, with the technology we had. And that was the mindset that I've kept this entire time, going even to 5 years ago now, with the beginning of the pandemic. And I kept my firm running with that mindset of how could we be hybrid, virtual, as much as possible. And when you have that mindset, it opens a lot more doors as to who can be your team members. If you they have to be physically in the office, all the time, then that really limits you. And also depending on what your tech stack is and your systems and operations. So this conversation actually impacts lots of aspects, from the operations to management and delegation, and also technology on top of staff, right? So I guess I usually explain myself into a few buckets. One is law practice management, having had my law firm for 15 plus years. And so I just wrote my second book about law practice management. You can see the copy in here, but there's actually 2 chapters on staffing. So, and one of them is about virtual staff. So you could definitely check that out if you want. It's available on Amazon. That's chapters 17 and 18. But the other one is advocacy, even running for office once, state rep. And then the other would be immigration. And so all 3 are a concern and interest of mine, as you can see from some of the bullets. But for more resources, I normally am recording every week a podcast about law practice management, Power Up Your Practice, same name as the book. And I'm also teaching every semester law practice management. So that keeps me abreast of a lot of different changes that are happening and what's going on. And one of the biggest things I wanted to mention is also the importance of tech. And I might as well just mention it now because it's going to be hard for me to contain myself. ABA Tech Show is next week, and it's April 2nd to 5th in Chicago. Really great place to hear from a lot of different vendors, and you get to really talk to them, see them, and a lot of other people really into the tech space so that you can talk with them, learn from them, a lot of thought leaders. So anyway, that's my plug for ABA Tech Show. Okay, so scaling a law practice requires some smart strategies. One thing I've learned along the way was if someone's leaving, don't just fill that position just because somebody left. Like if there's a legal assistant, someone leaves, or if there's an admin this or that, or an office manager this or that, don't just copy and paste and try to put someone in there. No, you need to be thinking a few steps ahead. You also need to do an audit and analyze who do you really need, and are you as optimized on your systems and your technology. So think out, zoom out, and don't try to avoid being in a position where you're too panicky that you can't think about working on the business because you're so in the business. I say that a lot. I didn't invent the idea, but I think it's a really good reminder. The other thing is to be leveraging the technology. We are seeing so many changes right now. I mean, just for the click of a button with ChatGPT, for example, you can have drafts and ideas and suggestions. I mean, it's crazy, right? How many of you, feel free to put in the chat, how many of you are regularly using, do you feel like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like you're really techie, where would you describe yourself? And how much do you use AI in some respect? It would be great to know, and we could see. Okay, we're getting some answers. So 10 is super techie and 1 is not so much. And inside that, okay, we're using AI every day. Yeah, me too. All right, we gotten some numbers. We're trending high on the tech, probably by being at a virtual conference. So that is a really good component to this whole conversation. And I say this because one of the things I think about is that I don't necessarily want to hire more people if we can use the leverage of the technology that we have available. And a lot of times, I know we're sponsored by this session, sponsored by DocketWise. I mean, a lot of times people, regardless of whatever case management software they may or may not be using, are not using it to its fullest capability, whether it's the case management or CRM or what have you. And so being able to learn how to best use it. And maybe you're awesome. Maybe you're an 8, you're a 5, you're a 7, but maybe your staff isn't. So that's another thing we always have to remember, is to pass on this information to them and be getting them up to speed as much as possible. Okay, so the technology is important. And if you have that infrastructure, you're going to make it easy for people to plug in regardless of wherever they are. I mean, it's crazy to think if a person could work down the street remotely, then why couldn't a person work from halfway around the world? And that's what I learned from working remotely from Dubai. I mean, yeah, my 10 hours were a little messed up, but I still was able to make it work. Ended up being pretty funny because I called myself mommy by day because I had a small baby, and then attorney by night. And I clocked in my time around 2 p.m. Dubai. It was when the US was starting to wake up. And it worked. I made it happen. And then you want to make sure that you have the right people in the right seats. You've heard all of those things like the right people on the bus, the right people on the rowing in the right direction. I put a lot about in chapter 2 about that, but it's so true. And this goes along with the whole delegation and management, but it really has to do with getting the right people, because if you get the wrong people, then even no matter what you do, it's going to be hard to get it going. And so anyway, those are some of the key highlights to think about, and we'll continue walking through this. So I really like thinking about the future. And I think we can't talk about this, scaling. It's about the future. It's being thinking a few steps ahead. I sort of think about the like a chess moves. Who would be your next few hires? Who would be your next are you going to focus on leveraging using your case management software folder more completely? Are you going to change it? Are you going to discover what other programs to add to your tech stack? So future proofing is really thinking about the future. So what are the trends, and how can you think about where the growth areas may be? There's different schools of thought about growth. Sometimes people say that if you're not growing, you're dying. Some people say that they don't have more staff because they want to keep it small on purpose. I hear a lot of different things about this topic. I think sometimes, no offense, that some people, and sort of goes with the whole E-Myth revisited concept, that people don't grow to the next level because they don't feel they're as strong as managers. If you look to E-Myth revisited, it talks about the 3 different phases a business goes through, and one is in the nascent stage where being a technician, being the lawyer is so important. And then the second part about growth, so getting out of being like a solo necessarily, is to not only master the area, like in our case lawyers, but to be able to manage and to delegate. And that's more of the manager role. And then that's in the middle stage. And then the final stage, it talks about the entrepreneur mindset is important to be able to, and that's more of that high level thinking about the future and going to that to next, the next level. And so while we're in that high level thinking about the future, working on the business, let's think about what are some of the trends that are going on. What do you think? I mean, I don't want to say all the answers because I don't have all the answers. What do you think are some of the trends that we're seeing out there that are affecting business? Feel free to put it in the chat. And I'll just go ahead and say a few things that I think are hitting us. One is the change in immigration that's affecting business. I feel like business is really busy right now, and that's a blessing. And we've seen ebbs and flows, we've seen ups and downs. Having practiced, I mean, I started my firm during the Great Recession, so those were some tough times. Graduating in 2008, starting the firm in 2009, but I've seen some ups and downs, and so that helps me be aware that I need to be prepared for different things and think like this. The other thing I think was a lot of geopolitical movement, which does affect what we do in immigration. And then we also think there's economic factors, including things like inflation and tariffs and other things along those lines, and then other forecasts. And then I think the one that really was the one that was like the big one, I feel like, for last year, but it still is, and it's not going away. It's just I feel like it gets a little overshadowed by some of the others, is technology and AI, honestly. And I think those are what I'm noticing, because they, first they say, oh, this AI tool is like having an intern. And then they're like, now they're saying, I heard on a keynote of the LawDroid conference like a week or so ago that this one attorney is no longer hiring if they're under 5-year associates. It's not necessarily immigration, it's a different area of law, because the AI is capable of doing a lot of that work. And so now we're hearing like under 5-year attorneys might be I'm not going to say replace sounds like a strong word, but people are reconsidering their hiring needs based upon the AI that's out there. And so I think a lot of attorneys were so risk adverse that we're sort of like the ostriches with their head in the sand, like, I'm going to pretend like this doesn't exist, or I'm going to wait till there's like a memo that says we can absolutely use it. Well, that's not really going to happen, and people have already been using it for a few years, and then those who do, it's this whole innovation adoption curve. Those who are using it more fully are getting the benefits. And we used to say, when I was doing these types of presentations, that the biggest causes of the big items on your big ticket line items were rent and labor. But now I'm thinking it's more a combination of your tech stack and labor. But the tech and the labor are very interesting because I feel like some things are being replaced with the tech. And there's a lot of movement. There's just a lot of movement in just the last, I don't know, handful of years. So keep all of that in mind. And lots of change going on, right? As an immigration practitioner. So you're probably like, yeah, you don't need to tell me. Actually, I think that I pulled some of these concepts from things that I used to talk about during the pandemic about like, how do we navigate the uncertainty? But it does require adaptability and resilience, and that can be learned through a lot of different experiences. But it's important to make sure that there's this method about stop, observe, think, plan, and act. If you sit on something too long, then that's a decision in itself. So we're constantly decision making, but then also avoiding the four poisons of the mind of fear, confusion, hesitation, and surprise. So if we sit on something too long about the hesitation, then like if you were waiting for some clearance about AI, then that's probably going to take a long time. I mean, it takes a while for the bar space to really catch up with technology. And if you let fear is a paralysis that holds you back. And I'm saying that too because a lot of people were afraid to have like virtual assistants or people they've never physically met. But you got to get over that. And the other thing, like, for example, in my Dubai story, I actually hired people remotely without ever seeing them. And all I had was Skype at the time, and that was pretty okay. But now we have Zoom and all these other programs. But like some people would say, no, if I didn't see them, then I wouldn't hire them. But anyway, those are some things to consider. And you're going to need strong leadership during a lot of these different changes. And so you need to analyze what can you control, what can you not control. It's a lot about what your concern and your ability to influence. And I know it's a lot of the things that we thought about during the pandemic. I couldn't ever forget this. Like there's the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns, right? And I sort of feel like we're in a time of that right now in the immigration space. Like I'm getting confused with what's being proposed or what's a rumor or what we heard on news, a leak, but then we don't know when it goes into effect. And keeping all of those things, I sort of am joking, it's like playing, I don't know, like 5D or 4D chess of some sort. And then you're having to keep all of these things in the same plane of existence. But it is important to try to stay focused on what you do know and what you can control and be ready for different scenarios as you're pivoting. Okay. So you need to evolve as times change. And just because like my firm's full service. And just to give you an example, like there was a time when court was down. And so we pivoted somewhere else. Or there was a time when the I-601A waivers were taking 4.5 years. Oh, wait, that's now. And so like it would just take a while to get those waivers. And there was a time when the consulate was slower for family based or something, or there was a time, you couldn't premium process certain cases, right? So you sort of just have to roll with it. I think some of the important thing is to see the landscape, see the trends, and try to make the plans. So one of the things that I think is essential in trying to do an analysis in the audit, that's where we're at right now, is the auditing space and evaluation is, do you have the right people in the right seats? Are you leveraging your technology to the fullest? how many of you say that you're leveraging your technology? Let's say 1 to 10, 10 being you're amazing. You know you're using it so well. You're like, I rock. And one's like, oopsie, I need to figure this out. And probably no one's going to say one, but I think this is a really good question, because what I find is a lot of people don't know. And you know what? The programs, they're always upgrading. They're always adding new features. And so if you go and like set it and forget it, you're going to miss something. I mean, that's happened to me multiple times. I highly suggest having someone on the team that's in charge of keeping up with your tech stack and evaluating it on a regular basis and what programs you have, because also you might not need your full robust tech stack if things can be that are sort of like absorbing other programs. Now, why does all this matter? It goes back to the bottom, the line items of the tech and the labor. And also, if you can do something more efficiently, then do that first. So, for example, I was changing my case management software this last year, and I purposely didn't want to hire more people more staff members until I knew how efficient and how we were going to work. And so that is that's one of these bullet points, and making sure that your standard operating procedures are written down, easily accessible, findable, and usable. The other thing is about delegation. Okay, we still have everybody in here, right? If you, who thinks that they're amazing at delegating? 10, you're amazing, and 1, you got a lot to learn, and somewhere in the middle. I think delegation is so important in this conversation, because you might have the right people, but if you're not leveraging them, then you're not going to be able to grow. And so it's great to be honest with yourself. If you've got room to grow, then you read books about it, get mentors, take some courses. There's really not a lot on, I feel like management, it's a combination of those different factors. Thanks to all those you were sharing. And then making sure that you have that infrastructure so that if you needed to scale, I can't think of a better example than like an accordion. I don't know, accordion. I don't know. Like if it was like there's crazy business and you needed to grow, boom, you could do it because you have the infrastructure, you have the program, you can just start adding people. Or if you had to quickly to shrink unnecessarily, unfortunately, would you be able to do that? So before we go more into some more of the meat of it, I think it's important to talk about doing a SWOT analysis. It's doing your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So your strengths could be like, you got a lot of the right people in the right seats. You're like, we're awesome. We have a lot of things written out. We're great. Weaknesses could be, oh no, we have the wrong people in the seats. We don't have things written out, or we need to work on our tech stack. Opportunities. I see some need over there. Maybe we should add that service, because this is what I see coming in the future. And the more you learn and the more you talk to people, the more you go to conferences, the more you're starting to see, you can see the tea leaves, as they say, and you could start imagining the future. And so that's what I really love about programs at conferences, CLEs, and like the tech show, for example. I feel like by going there, I can start seeing the trends of what's happening by those who I'm talking to and all the thought leaders there. And then threats like, what if they got rid of this option? What if they got rid of that? Being able to think, how would you pivot, and not being shocked by that. So you're like, I got a plan. A lot of large companies, they have a plan for a lot of different things, like pandemic, flood, hurricane, economic uncertainty. Boom, they've got a little memo about that, and they have a whole plan. When you're more of a smaller shop, you don't have all of that, but why not? We need to be prepared. Having run my law firm in Houston, we've had everything. We've had floods, we've had hurricanes, we had the pandemic. And so that made us stronger. It made us more resilient. And so those are things to consider. So auditing your firm's operations. Do you think that you have the right people in the right seats? Do you have the systems written down? Do you like the clients that you've been attracting? Do you want to change that? It's not just about, we're talking more about staff, but really thinking about the big picture, because it's all connected. So that's what I would say would be number one. This is where to go. I would say number one, block off a couple of hours and make yourself homework to audit the firm. And then you can keep doing a lot of the other things we're talking about. So then do you have statistics about the productivity? Like, does Jane do an adjustment in like, I don't know, 1 hour, but Joe does it in 5 and it's the same type of case? Well, then, maybe Joe shouldn't be doing the adjustment status, or maybe we should do a little evaluation as to maybe there's a misunderstanding or they're not using the technology. So that's why I really like doing these audits before and having that data, like what's measured matters, because you can then go and make those changes. You can watch it over time. And so it's that is really important to have those metrics. And then you can, while you're auditing, figure out these gaps. I mean, just because you've always had this one position, like before I had a receptionist, I had all my assistants help answer the phone on a rolling basis. And one day, a brave assistant said, "Ruby, could we just have like a full-time assistant, a receptionist?" I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Okay." And I realized it was because we needed them to be able to focus on their job and other people, a receptionist, to focus on theirs. And then, and that's really what happens when you're a small shop. You have to wear a lot of hats, and as you get bigger, you can start separating those functions out, and you're wearing less hats. And so then making those hires with the goals of the firm, not just because, oh, this person left, now we have to replace them. No, like I was mentioning at the beginning. And again, about technology, there's so many amazing programs out there. Like Candle AI has a program about helping you draft emails and connects to your case management software, for example. I mean, I use ChatGPT, like the paid version, all the time. I'm like in there. It's like I feel like I don't go to Google search anymore. I feel like I'm just in the ChatGPT. And there's making sure that you're using your programs, your staff is using it. I mean, I think the biggest thing to look for is that the data comes in and it flows everywhere from the intake, the contract, all the way to the end. That is super important. So look for programs like that, including the forms. So you want to make sure that you get the right people. So one key tip is to analyze what's your mission and vision for the firm. Okay. And then we're covering a lot of territory. What are your core values? A lot of this is mentioned in Traction and a lot of other business books. And I mentioned some summaries of that and some other things in my book. But who are the people that you really want to have more of in your firm? And so one good way to think about it is, who's an ideal employee that you have, or team member? And I say team member because sometimes they're a contractor or what have you, or part-time or something like that. What is it about them that you like? The ones I really want to have more of are go the extra mile, problem solver. Go ahead. You can put in the chat. What are some of the characteristics of having the right people in the firm? Let's go ahead and see if we say some of the same things, because some things are more important to people than others. I think really reliable. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. One of my biggest pet peeves is the delegator upper, like where they do a little bit and then they come out as and then anyway. Don't get me started about that. Ability to learn. Oh, that's a really, really good one. Yeah. Multilingual. Yeah. And so Traction came out with it has this people analyzer. I mean, it seems really basic when you think about it, but if I never had heard of it before, and it's just put those different things you want, let's say reliable, ability to learn, multilingual, good attitude. Oh, that's a good one. And then when you're interviewing, let's say 2 people or 3, let's say, and then as you looked at the resume, you did the behavioral question, you did the references, you did the background check. But when you come down to it, to get more of a cultural fit, is to check to see who has more of these core values that are so important. Proactive. Oh, that's so important. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're on the same page. This is great. And so when you do this using this people analyzer as an example, it helps you take some of that subjectivity out of it, because you're able to see what is it really important. Sometimes they say, I can train for, I can give them the knowledge, I can train for that, but I can't train for the right attitude or, and so, as you've done lots of hiring over time, you can start realizing what can be filled on the job and what they need to come come to the job with. And so, there's lots of different parts about this. Do you want full-time? Do you want part-time? An employee, a contractor, remote hire? So lots of different aspects. I think one thing that freaks people out in the beginning of starting a business is like, how do you do all of that? I use QuickBooks Online, and it does a lot of the payroll process. It takes a lot of the the confusion out of it. There's like a lot of other programs out there. And so it can make it a lot easier. So don't let that be a reason to intimidate you. But getting the right people in the right seats and keeping them engaged, that is so important. So you could have a mix of people in-house, contract, virtual, could outsource, you have full-time. I mean, there's so many different options. And I talk a lot about that in my chapters in the book. I mean, when you have a contractor and they work for other people, then they could, not be able to be focused on your position as much. And so you have to keep that in mind. Maybe you use it temporarily until you have the funds and the need and the demand to get a full-time employee. But what's beautiful about it is there's not just one way to do this. Like you really could have a part-time answering service that helps cover when your part-time employee is not available, and you could really make this all work. And so it really comes down to what are your needs, and then you can go find ways to meet it. And I think if you could think about a few steps ahead, like for example, I'll give you one. We have an in-person receptionist and we have a virtual receptionist for phones. But then when the phones are too busy, we still have a virtual assistant, a virtual service covering the phones. Evenings, nights, lunchtime, or if somebody's sick or something. But it's great because that, service, they only are used when we put the phones on, and we can put our phones on a rolling system like that. I mean, probably a lot of you are doing something similar. But we know that this remote system, a lot of us are using this, it enhances. So let's also put in the chat, who's used a virtual assistant? Yes, no. How many of you are, what's your thoughts about virtual assistants? But having remote work enhances being able to find people who can do the work. You're able to fill the need. If you're like only the people that live, some people live in rural places, they can't find people, or maybe it's a specialty knowledge thing. Like I have a contractor in Colorado, one in Arizona, and then I have virtual assistants in Argentina, Honduras, Mexico, Peru, and maybe somewhere else. And so, after a while, you sort of, it's in writing somewhere. But if you're using the cloud-based tools and collaboration, it doesn't matter where they are. They're logging in the same way that we have a Google chat, and they have a case management software login. And someone's like virtual assistants. Yes. Life-saving. Yes. We got a lot of people who are pro virtual assistants here. Being able to have that hybrid model has really made a difference, because those who are local, by being able to let them keep that hybrid schedule, it's allowed me to retain that talent I otherwise wouldn't be able to have. And I think, in these types of discussions, it's hard to know where people are at, because a lot of people have run their firms, in the last 5 years. And so they've experimented with that. I think that a lot of big companies were trying to get people to come back into the office. You got to do what works for you, but I think it's sort of hard to get the cat out of the bag after back in the bag. Is it back in the bag? After it's been out of the bag, because once they know that it's possible, and I think really what it comes down to, it's being able to find the right talent, keeping them engaged and happy. And sometimes, this is more important than a pay increase, but also, just being able to have that flexibility. It's really important, because just like that accordion, if you needed to expand really quickly, if there was a surge of work, you'd be able to do that. And having that infrastructure, it's really key to have. So yeah, there's different things like, your team members might feel isolated. So you've got to make sure, or there could be different time zones, like the daylight savings. Like I pay attention to that more than ever, because like Mexico doesn't have it. So I have to remember, are they in sync with me in CST, 6 months out of the year and sometimes not. And then like Argentina, I feel like we're a big difference. Anyway, so it's like I care way more about time zones than ever before. But these things are important, and I work with them too. I let them say, okay, well, if you want to clock in an hour earlier than the rest of the team, just to make it more doable, then we do things like that. But also, the key point about all of this is making sure that the people can handle the work. Like they're accessible when you need them. They do the work. There's not second guessing. Are they, just using some mouse thingy, I don't know, whatever that is, and that that they're actually doing the work. I mean, I want to make sure that they are, we have the right people, so we don't have to be worried about that, and that they know that we trust them. And so those are some of the things to consider. Everything from the tech aspect to getting feedback and being cognizant about data security, which is such an important thing. I mean, everything you secure internet, regular updates, and making sure that you're using a lot of cloud-based things and not putting things on a laptop. And for virtual assistants, they have to be in a room without others, so for confidentiality. And there's even for having a protocol for your tech and your software is important for regardless of where your team is located. So just normal type of things. We need to know what the difference between a contractor and employee, and this also can differ state to state. So this can get really complicated quickly. I think it's important to have an employment attorney that you can communicate with about the different scenarios that you're doing. There's also international labor laws and tax requirements. One of the companies I mentioned in another side is Deal, DEL, and they help people navigate having assistance in different countries. But there's lots of different rules, and just because we know that way we do things, for example, in the place I did most of my team members were from Texas, and it's a very employer friendly state and at will and things like that. But as I've progressed with a bigger team and different diverse situations, I've had to learn a lot more. And there's other things like you could use platforms like Upwork, which is actually, I think it was called Odesk back in the day. And I used it a lot back when I was in Dubai to find different contractors. Indeed, you can post positions even in different locations. Fiverr is just one of those other ones for different contractors. Those are just like for contractors in some cases, or Indeed actually to post. Deal is one that can help with payroll and global teams. I'm using, and then there's also staffing agencies. Like I use Staffy, for example, for my virtual assistants. And there's a lot of other program staffing agency out there, and they can do different things. Like they can help you find the right people, do background checks, interview, and give you one or two options for that role that you're looking for. They can deal with the payroll and all those other things and give other trainings. And it really comes down to a good cultural fit and making sure that they the different things that you're looking for in a team member. I honestly started going to virtual assistants not because of the cost effectiveness. It was really because I couldn't find people in Houston to do what I needed. And I was just spending so much time posting and interviewing and trying and trying and trying. That's really what happened. And then what happened was I was finding a few of these different virtual assistant companies, and I was interviewing them and checking them out. And then I found one I liked. I got someone from one of their team members, joined my team. And then after that, it got sort of addicting a little bit. I was like, oh, well, I need to replace this person's leaving. We have to have this role. Okay. And then a lot of the things I thought that weren't possible, like, for example, marketing. We used to have the marketing assistant record in the office. Then I just record on my own and WhatsApp it to her. And she edits. Executive assistant, I used to need them to be in the office to help me with occasional things with my kids. We overcame that. And then also, like, for a party or an event at my office, they can just Instacart the stuff. Those are different things that we are able to find workarounds. In legal assistant for court, for example, they were saying, oh, you can't have a virtual assistant do that because of the paper filings. Well, guess what? We had the online filings afterwards, and that made everything easier. So there's a lot of ways to work around. The compensation can be mixtures of salary, performance bonuses, depending, lawyers are allowed profit sharing, others aren't. But, looking to what the laws allow, sometimes even just different benefits are really what people want. And so asking what is important to your team member and polling them on a regular basis, because sometimes just having a great work environment, feeling that they're fulfilling a cause, getting the pay they want, having that flexibility, sometimes those are the things that they really want, and we can't just assume they want or don't want. And so as we're getting closer to the end, to the questions, culture is so important. We've heard that expression that they give Peter Drucker credit for. It's like culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you don't have the right culture, the right teams, and you don't build into that, and then somebody else will, it becomes sort of like someone will take control of the situation. So you want to make sure that you are getting the right people, you're encouraging the right behavior that you want to have. And when you see the wrong behavior or the wrong things start leading into a culture that doesn't go well with your firm, making sure that you correct that. And so recognizing those who are accomplishing things like we were talking about, like teamwork, reliable learning, extra mile, those are the types of things that are very important. And I think the only other couple of things that I wanted to mention was just having that transparent communication, expectation setting from when you hire, when you have performance reviews on a regular basis, and empowering the employees with your team members with training and mentorship, that work-life balance. If you need to have a mental health day or you need to take a break, you can start seeing that in your team. Do something about it. And as leaders, we also need to be good at that, which can be hard. Like, I know it can be hard. But I think that when they know that you care about them, when you are doing the best you can to help them have a good work-life balance, and then they will reward you with their dedication. And what I didn't say the word turnover, but turnover is so expensive and costly, same word, but basically and time consuming. So having the right people in the right seats, and building a strong, healthy culture and growing your team, and not just like numbers, but making them feel that they are valued and they have a place to grow in the firm is really going to go a long way. And this is part of that resilient. And one other thing that's really critical in this space is just cross-training people, because you don't want to have just one person who knows how to do that one thing. That's super dangerous. So making sure that you're always thinking you have maybe 2 or 3 people deep who know how to do that thing. What if they all go on vacation on the same time or something like that? So being able to have that cross training. So we covered a lot, and you feel free to always reach out. We got questions coming up, but it requires the strategic hiring, which that's so much in depth of how to interview and how to find the right people. But there's different best practices, and then evaluating whether you can have remote work or hybrid. And like I said, the SOPs, the technology is so important as to making sure you're leveraging it, auditing it, evaluating on a regular basis, and continuing to do this. And whoever said that, said it and forget it. I know it's so catchy, but it's so dangerous. So don't just set it and forget it, because if you do anything, it's probably good. You're probably going to regret it at some point. So anyway, lots of things to think about, and we're going into questions, but just to stay in touch, I'll put some notes in here. We have a book, Power Up Your Practice podcast. We got like 50 something episodes, lots of great content. And feel free, I do consultations on different things in law practice management. Feel free to reach out. And I am an immigration attorney in Houston, full service. So if we've got the asylum office, 3 immigration courts, 2 international airports, and a lot of territory here in Texas. So if you ever anything, let me know. Love to be of help. So let's go ahead and take some of these questions.
Thank you so much, Ruby. That was fantastic. We've got a lot of questions. Let's see if we can get through a few of them in our time left.
Okay.
So you mentioned hiring your first employee and remembering that moment. One of our questions is tips for looking for global talent. How do you get over that initial fear, potential issues that you're thinking about with time zones, payroll, et cetera? How can somebody get the courage to finally take that leap and hire somebody globally?
I think talking to people who have done it help builds your, hopefully generally will build your confidence. Some people might tell you some horror stories, but you learn from them too. There's some Facebook groups online, I think like Immigration Attorneys Virtual Assistant, something like that. You can sort of see, you can talk to me, talk to some other people who have them. I think interviewing different staffing agencies or deciding, are you going to do a direct hire or are you going to use a staffing agency? I choose a staffing agency because they took a lot of the unknowns out of the picture. And I realized I needed to focus on being an immigration attorney. And I didn't want to have to be trying to figure out all the different rules in all the different countries and trying to put my candidates on a short list, because I also knew my office manager was spending so much time doing all of that. So talking to people who've had success, learn what they learned. Those are some of the key points. Interviewing a couple different staffing agencies, you'll pick up stuff. Even if you don't hire them, you'll learn some things, and it'll make you, a better consumer in that space. I think then you'll build your confidence. But having your tech organized, and then there's one other thing I forgot to mention. You just have to over communicate a lot when you have virtual team members, and initially. Because sometimes you think just because a person's like in the same office that you can, oh, well, they know what's going on. Actually, reality is not, you need to communicate and be a good manager no matter where they are. But sometimes things don't get translated as well when you don't have that an in-person connection. So be aware of that, especially with different cultural backgrounds and what might not, if it's being done over chat. That's why sometimes my team uses a lot of different emojis sometimes, just to make sure they get when it's a joke or something like that, and keep it lighthearted. Anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned a staffing agency. I know you previously also mentioned having a good employment lawyer for any of those issues. Are there any other top level services you would recommend for somebody who wants to be global, already is? And somebody specifically asked about employer of record. Do you have any recommendations there, or any other professionals that you might bring into your team?
I think that we have a CPA that knows how things work in different states and countries. Then we have the staffing agency. I pretty much exclusively have team members through them, so that helps keep it simple. The employment attorney can help you on lots of different aspects, from an employment manual to maybe an agreement. Like I mentioned, there's different services and programs out there. Like even DEAL, it seems to be expanding a lot of different services, DEEL, and they can do different things. But those are just some that come to mind. And I think the more you do research, the more you'll pick up on that. And I do mention a lot in my 2 chapters in my book.
Amazing. Perfect. All right. Go buy Ruby's book, everybody. We'll learn more. So another question, Ruby, is any good practices or tips for people who might have remote or hybrid, certain people in an office together, others remote, how to keep everybody integrated, part of the same team, connected?
Yeah. So, I think we worked harder on that during the pandemic because we knew that we weren't in the same office and stuff. But sometimes there's a lot of different programs out there that I heard of one that you can, you put in money, the employer puts in money, but team members can reward the staff members for, just doing something. They can't give it to themselves. They have to give it to someone else. And it sort of creates goodwill. There's other ones playing with different quizzes or games. There was National Cheese Day or something. And we all went around and said what our favorite cheese was. We all got really hungry after that. It was sort of dangerous, but celebrating birthdays, celebrating wins, And what I meant about like it didn't really matter where the person was, it really didn't feel like it mattered because we still cared about each other. We still were uplifting each other regardless. And so sending gift cards, you can do that even if they're in another country. So and keeping some of those things we did during the pandemic to sort of create a culture that it wasn't like the ones who come in and the ones who aren't. Like, don't try not to have that separation, so that it, regardless of where a person is. And when I go to foreign countries, sometimes I'll meet up with my assistants. And like right now, I'm ordering some T-shirts and swag, and I'm planning to give them to them, or you can send it to them, in advance. So there's a lot of different things to help everyone feel a part of the culture.
Amazing. And we have a specific question about looking for virtual assistants. You mentioned interviewing a few of them before you found the one that was right for you. Do you have any tips about what stood out to you as far as some that worked better than others?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like find a few of them, then interview them, find other people who've used the ones and see what they like or they don't like about the ones that are out there. That's why there's different chat groups, even, just general ones like We're on the Beach sometimes talks about this stuff, and even like the AV Tech Show, some of the other, and even the ALO conference, a lot of them come as vendors. And for me, it was background checks. It was training. It was like how they found the candidates, and that stood out to me. And then after I found a good fit, I just pretty much stuck with it. But people have had different experiences, and there's growing pains and things like that. So find out what works for you. But I think interviewing a few of them and having some recommendations by those who use them, that's important.
Great, great. And I think we have time for one more quickly here, Ruby. And this is a good one. When having a global team working hybrid or remote, how do you deal with technical issues? Unreliable internet, bad connections, making sure everyone has good equipment. Do you have any suggestions there?
Well, with my virtual team, they're supposed to have a computer, or we'll send them one if necessary. But and they're supposed to have reliable internet. That's part of like the requirement. But I mean, they'll have blackouts. I mean, we could have a blackout. Like and they have a hurricane. We could have a hurricane. One of the things I learned was that by us being geographically diverse, it allows us to roll with whatever that was going on. And so I'm glad about that, because being down in one area doesn't mean, and hey, maybe they have to relocate to a different place and they're offline for 30 minutes, an hour. That could happen to anybody. So if it becomes more of a trend, we might have to find a more of a long-term solution to that situation. But we've been able to roll with it, everything from tech being down, internet, electricity, power, whatever. But it could happen to us anywhere. So that's a good question. And I think the adaptability and the right attitude and communication is really important. Like if they're completely disappeared, like you get worried, but they'll chat you somehow, like, this is what's happening. And then, okay, that's fine. And then they log back on when they can. So.
Amazing, amazing. Unfortunately, we're out of time. For everyone else who asked questions, Ruby did provide her information and ways to reach out to her if you have any follow-up questions or want to tap her for any more of her expertise. And as she mentioned, she does have a couple books that have a lot of this great knowledge for you to check out as well. Thank you so much, Ruby. Do you have any parting thoughts? Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. There's a lot to talk about. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email, and we can continue the conversation. But you can really grow your firm, and when you leverage the technology and the delegation, I think the sky's the limit. So thanks for watching.
Amazing. Thank you to everyone who attended.